Hello and welcome. Today I'm joined by Rashelle Fetty, who is the founder of the Fetty Firm, a premier boutique practice in North Texas specializing in high stakes family law, probate, and estate planning. After betting on herself and launching her firm immediately after the bar, she has spent over 17 years building a reputation for big firm results with a small firm service. Today, we are diving into the reality of the 17-year milestone, the forgotten odds that taught her a lesson in scaling, and how she's navigating the transition from practicing law to growing a mediation-heavy business model. We are also going to dig into why most law firms feel blind when it comes for their marketing and ROI and how to fix that. Rashelle, welcome to the Growth Switch.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. Do you want to share your origin story? Because from what we discussed before the recording, you had a pretty much immediate transition from passing the bar and betting on yourself. Take us back into the early days. What was the decision behind going this way?
So I passed the bar first time, woo, and started interviewing for jobs. I got an offer to be a misdemeanor prosecutor in kind of the next county over. And then I got an offer to work at a law firm doing family law, and it was on an eat what you kill model. So they would advance you money every month. If you collected that much, then great. If you didn't, you owed them money back. And the estimate from them was that I'd make about 45,000 in the first year, and then the salary offer from the prosecutor's office was 45,000 as well. And I said, first of all, that's not really enough to live on, even back in 2013. But also, I said, God, with keeping 100% instead of 25%, I think I can still make 45,000. So I just went for it. Sounds a little crazy, but fortunately it worked out. And that's exactly how much I made that first year.
Fantastic. So you beat the call. Were anybody in your network at the time telling you to take the safe option? And what made you decide that no, whatever needs to happen, I will go through it and get it done?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. My mom is a nurse, and so she's kind of always had a steady job, paycheck, W-2, all the good stuff, health insurance, paid time off. And so she very much said, "Oh gosh, that prosecutor job, you're going to get a lot of great experience. It's going to look so good on a resume. You'll have health insurance." She wanted me to take that one for sure, and I did not.
And the rest, like they say, is history.
Yeah.
Was there any specific case that made her come around and see that you're on a very successful path of your own and you're doing well?
I don't know. You'd have to ask her that, I think. And so I still don't have health insurance. And so for her as a nurse, she hates that. So I maybe don't ask her if she thinks I'm successful at this point.
Fair enough. What about for yourself? What was maybe in the first year or 2 year? What was the case or event that made for you internally to confirm that you're on the right track and you're doing what you're supposed to?
I think at the end of that first year, when I went and ran the books and did my accounting, and I saw, yeah, I made exactly what they offered me, I was like, phew, right? And so I didn't feel silly after that first year. And then the next year was more, and I was able to put some money toward my student loans, which felt good. And then probably the second year, I think I bought a car, and so it just worked. I was living cheap for sure, but I was able to do the things that I needed to do. I was comfortable. It is stressful to not know where the money's coming and if it's coming. So that took some getting used to, several years for that to not feel the, oh my gosh, I don't know if I'm going to make it or not. That probably took 3 or 4 years, but it really went very smoothly. So, knock on wood, the big bet has paid off. So,
Certainly. I think for a lot of lawyers, there is safety in initially, at the very least, being part of the bigger firm because you know the billable hours you're supposed to hit. You have your targets, whether it's for new business or for anything else. In your situation, you had that initial goal of what would be your salary if you had taken the job. So I'm guessing that was the initial goal. How did you set up your goals beyond that point so that you're on the track to continue growing the practice?
So I grew up in a small town in northwest Oklahoma, and the most money really my parents ever made was about 50 or 55,000 each. My mom later took a different type of job and ended up getting almost 100, like 95,000.
Hmm.
So for me, just growing up, that was after I was in college. But so growing up, hitting 55, 60,000 was kind of what I was looking for. But then, you get a little wider experience, and I thought 100,000 was like the end all be all.
Hmm.
And that took probably about 5 years to crack that number. So, that was a goal early on to get to six figures. And really, I just worked and worked and worked. I mean, there's just not really another way to explain it. It was long days, nights, weekends, easily 60, 70 hours a week for years.
Hmm.
And my mom didn't like that either. She's like, you work too hard. But I mean, at a big firm, you work that hard anyway. So you might as well be keeping what you're earning, doing it for yourself. It's much more rewarding and it's easier to keep yourself going, at least for me, when it was for me, not for someone else.
That internal motivation is, I think, will resonate with a lot of entrepreneurs. Has your definition of the hard work changed over the years? Because a trap many professionals fall into is being busy but not necessarily productive. And especially as business owners, we have to consider that if we are spending a lot of time, we need to make sure it's going to the best place for that to yield a return for the business. So for you, has that changed over the years?
For sure. And that's something that's hard to make that transition because, kind of as you go along, sometimes you need to let go of the things that got you to where you are because you're in a different place now. So one example would be some of the legal insurance that I've worked with that didn't
Hmm.
pay well. It was a hard decision for me to say, you know what? I'm not going to use them anymore because exactly what you're saying, the quality wasn't there. So yes, I was doing a
Hmm.
lot of work, but I wasn't getting rewarded in the way that I should. And so it was scary to let those go, but it was always the right decision. I don't regret any of it. Yeah, absolutely. Things have changed. And, this is something that I tell my friends a lot. And I'm like, when you have too many cases, you don't work them the way that they need to be worked. And
Hmm.
so you're not making as much money as you should per case, but also your clients aren't happy because it's not moving at the pace that it should be. They're not getting that contact that they need, especially in family law. The clients need a lot of contact. And so when you have less cases, at a certain point, you make more money with less
Hmm.
cases. It's the quality of life is huge, especially as you go further on. It's exhausting to
Hmm.
run a really high volume practice that you're running for yourself, and so that the quality of life, quality of cases, that becomes a lot more important as you go on.
There is certainly also an emotional toll dealing with clients because law school teaches us about the law. It doesn't necessarily teach us about the business of running law practice and actually working with clients. What was your maybe biggest lessons in the first 5 years of how to address that for you to build your own approach that maybe you have today?
So, one of the things that has worked for me that maybe isn't for everybody else is just to be a real person with my clients. I find that just relating to them on their level allows them to relax and open up and tell you the things that you need to know as a lawyer. So, I think a lot of times they kind of expect a stuffy,
Hmm.
library, which I do love books, but they expect someone
Hmm.
that's not living in the same world that they are. And so when you can relate to them on their level, talk to them about their dogs or, their favorite football team or music. I play music all the time just for myself, really. But
Hmm.
it also is a great connector and it helps people relax. And when they're comfortable, then you can build that trust. And especially with family law, they have to be open with you and tell you things that they don't want to tell anybody, things that they haven't told anybody. If
Hmm.
if they're cheating on their spouse, if they have $100,000 in credit card debt, these are things that their closest friends and confidants don't know.
Hmm.
but their lawyer needs to know. And so to make that connection for me, it works best when I'm just a real person with them.
Have you developed like a list of red flags and green flags when you initially talk to the client to make sure it will be a good relationship so they can open up to you and you also feel good about representing and helping them?
I wouldn't say that there's a list, but it's just kind of a gut check.
Hmm.
You go with your instincts. And that's absolutely something that older lawyers told me that has been great advice that I have followed always is you will regret the cases you did take more
Mm.
than the ones that you did not. And that is so 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 true. One of the things that matters a lot to me, my paralegal answers the phone, and if she doesn't like somebody, then that's a no right there. If they're rude to her, if they're difficult with her, then nope, I don't want to work with that person, and we're not going to work well because I'm not going to let somebody disrespect my employee. She's the nicest person ever anyway. So
Hmm.
if you're going to be mean to her, then you have a real.
I think it's important to have somebody whose judgment you can trust, and having the person that you described is quite important. How did you find the right person for you to be that initial person that meets potential clients so that you can also trust the emotional judgment that is going to be a good person for you then to engage with?
I just got lucky. I was hiring, and a lawyer that I knew that had moved away from the area, recommended my person to me now, and I'm hanging on tight. She's been with me, let's see, 4 years, 4.5.
Hmm.
So yeah, I really just got lucky. But again, I think it comes down to kind of a gut check. Meet somebody and follow your instincts. If you like them, then treat them well.
I completely agree that having that gut check is super important. And there is a saying that, behind every warning sign, there is a story. Would you be able to maybe share whether it's a client or maybe it's somebody that you hired in the past when you saw an example of what not to do, as in not a client to take on or maybe a person not to hire, so that it became a lesson for you going forward?
I have a lot of those. But the one that I'll tell you is a good one because kind of it goes again with some advice that I had gotten from older lawyers, and in this circumstance I didn't follow it. So sometimes they say, well, if you're doing the consult and you don't really like the person, you don't like the case, quote them high,
Hmm.
and then they either go away, or if they hire, then all right, you've made good money. Okay, I don't actually agree with that.
Hmm.
I think that's terrible advice, because for me, I don't find it to be ethical.
Hmm.
And so, but this one particular time, I had quoted somebody kind of high, and because trial was coming up, that was why I quoted high. Is it was a little close to trial,
Hmm.
and they didn't hire that day. Well, they came back probably 2 months later and hired, and I didn't know, I mean, staff takes the money because
Hmm.
that's what they're supposed to do. So
Hmm.
they signed the client, and they didn't realize that trial was like in 2 weeks,
Hmm.
but the client already had the quote and the fee agreement, and so off we went. And so I had never liked the idea of quote 'em high, and that one, it absolutely bit me that I didn't give the client a deadline of, hey, your trial is coming up, you have to hire by this date or else I'm not taking it.
Hmm.
And that was a difficult client, a difficult case. It went on a long time, trial got moved. Yeah, it just was not good. So somebody that waits to the last minute would go on the list of red flags.
Red flags. For sure. That makes a lot of sense. You referred to getting advice from older lawyers. How important were mentors for you and from the advice that you received from them? So you mentioned that this advice that you don't agree with. What were the best and worst advice that you received from your mentors?
Oh man, one of the best ones that I use a lot is read the rule.
Hmm.
It sounds so basic, but it's something that doesn't always happen.
Mm-hmm.
And you should continue reading the rule even when you've been practicing a long time. I still do, because first of all, sometimes they change the rule.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, like, you remember it wrong sometimes. I mean, there's no harm in going back and reading the rule.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times in practice, something that's always kind of irritated me is that we get in a habit of kind of doing things just because that's the way we do it. And we don't remember or think about or even know why.
Mm-hmm.
And so read the rule is really, really good advice. And another one that was about practicing was, if you think that you're going to go out on your own ever, then do it as early as you can, because when you're used to living cheap, it's a lot easier to keep doing that. It's way easier to do that than it is to have gotten accustomed to a lifestyle and then go backwards. So that was definitely good advice. Bad advice, yeah, the quotum high, I hate that one, because it's not fair to clients. And yeah, I don't find it to be ethical, and it plays into the, you're going to regret the cases that you do hire more than the ones that you don't, and so those are the ones that you regret for sure.
I think it often comes from the place of scarcity. If the firms only operate based on referrals, they don't really get to choose who they sign, because if they get referral, they need to make the most of it. And that tends to translate into some bad cases and a lot of regret. Whether they quote high or not, it's just headache sometimes for the team members, for the partner and owner of the firm. So it's usually just not worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. I would much rather. But I think that attitude of scarcity is one of fear.
Mm-hmm.
And living in fear in any situation uh, is not for me.
Not very helpful, is it?
No.
On the first recommendation that you mentioned, so knowing the rule and staying updated, do you think it's harder now to do that with AI? Because everybody tends to get a little bit lazy with the answer so easily accessible without necessarily actually verifying the answer.
Yeah, well, I'm making a face because AI is also not for me.
Mm-hmm.
I refuse to use it. I won't put anything in there. I mean, especially as lawyers, it's not secure. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I have no trust in anyone but myself, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But certainly something like that, no, I have no trust in it. So I vehemently refuse to use it.
Mm-hmm.
I teach legal research to paralegal students at East Texas A&M, and I don't want them to use it. And if
Mm-hmm.
I catch, I mean, is a strong word, but if I think that they're using it, I let them know.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely not. And this was a really good example. We had one just the other day that it was a homework assignment. I asked them about how long you have to survive in Texas for like inheritance purposes, wills and such, and a good amount of the students picked a certain code section that was close. It said the right words. It had the 120 hours in it, but it wasn't the one that I wanted,
Mm-hmm.
and so I marked them wrong. And we were in class the next week, and I pulled up the estate code. I've got it on the desktop right now. Estate code,
Mm-hmm.
boom. And I went through the index, and I was like, look, this is how you guys were supposed to do this. You go through the index, and boom, you find the one that I wanted first. The one that you were looking at, it was kind of an exception. And what they had to have done is just kind of Google it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, this is exactly why I tell you all the time, use the index. Okay. Use the actual code. They weren't using AI. I don't think it was that, but if you're just kind of Googling it, you're in, Westlaw, Lexis, whichever of the resources you're using, and you just do a search and take whatever it gives you. Oh, so you have to
Mm-hmm.
do the work. I mean, that's one of the things about law school too, is they teach you how to think like a lawyer. No, they don't teach you how to practice. They don't teach you how to run a business, how to deal with clients, any of that, which I would like to see more of. But that teaching you how to think like a lawyer is invaluable.
I think there's a lost art of tinkering. Whenever you're doing research or, just optimizing your practice, it takes a certain, I think, attitude to want to press every button and see what happens, and to test and experiment and take the extra time. And I think it's becoming a very scarce skill, because everybody wants to just get the first answer, believe it blindly, and just move on. One of the interesting things that was reported by some of the guests that I spoke with is that because of AI, even they might not use it, but they get more educated clients. Sometimes their clients will come more research, and they not necessarily will be correct, but they will have more high level conversation, and sometimes that can be helpful. Is that your experience?
Yes and no. Yes, they think that they're more educated. But,
Right.
I mean, you see the little coffee cup out there that says, don't confuse your Google search with my law degree.
Mm-hmm.
And so depending on the person, sometimes they do and they want to argue with you but that has always been the case because they'll say, well, my friend or my cousin had a case just like this and this is
Mm-hmm.
what happened. And I'm like, well, then it wasn't just like yours because that's not what's going to
Mm-hmm.
happen here. So I mean that it's always been an issue with clients, but yeah, it might be worse now because they feel more emboldened by it. But for the good clients, it is kind of helpful that they have a better idea of what they need to ask you
Mm-hmm.
when they're looking for something. For example, estate planning. I also do estate planning. And so when they have done a little bit of research before they call, then that can be helpful because sometimes when you're doing those consultations, you're just speaking Greek to them.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's helpful most in that area more than family law.
When a client comes to you, what's the one thing that they have not prepared? Because earlier I mentioned they might have expectations about what the lawyer should look like. What is the thing that many clients are surprised by when they start working with you that they didn't expect?
I think for the family law clients, it's the amount of information and detail that we need. And that's something that I'm obviously just a detail person.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's something that really surprises me because, I'll be asking, okay, bank accounts, retirement accounts, life insurance, credit cards, all the things. I need all the assets and all the liabilities.
Mm-hmm.
And people are just kind of like, I don't know. How much is your house worth? Gee, I don't know. How much do you owe on it? Oh, wow. I have to log in and look. And
Mm-hmm.
that it's surprising to me because it's very different from me. Like I
Mm-hmm.
personally have a little spreadsheet that I kind of look forward to updating every month. Some numbers go up and some go down, and that's good. That's the way I want it to be. And so that has always surprised me
Mm-hmm.
how kind of out of touch people can be with their own lives.
Mm-hmm.
This is your life here.
Maybe it's the curse of knowledge for whichever expertise we have, but that's quite a common pattern as well. I get to have a lot of conversations with business owners about their marketing numbers, and quite often they don't know. There are a lot of assumptions, and it's always interesting to see when a managing partner is in the same room with their director of marketing, and we start going through the numbers together, and you can see when they start looking at each other, realizing they had completely different expectations. So being thorough certainly pays. With where you are with business right now, so when you first started, you hit your milestone, you kept growing your practice. Is the goal now to keep growing it, or are you scaling it at a good lifestyle business when you're working with great clients without necessarily having negative effect on your quality of life?
Yeah, the second one. I got as big as I wanted to get a few years ago. I had quite a bit of staff, running a lot of cases, making good money, and it was just I'm too old for that.
Right.
The 60, 70 hour weeks.
Mm.
But now it's just like I'm not doing that, and I don't have to.
Hmm.
So I have scaled back the last few years, and it's great. First of all, it's great.
Hmm.
It allows me to do the teaching, and I really enjoy the teaching. And I got trained to be a mediator, and I'm mediating, and I love that. The
Hmm.
mediation is so fun. And yes, so I would love to do more mediations and continue going down this way.
Right.
Less cases, more mediation, more teaching. It's amazing.
Was there again a specific maybe example that made you consider that as the path forward, so that you're switching from the work that you were traditionally doing, making this the new direction that you're heading towards?
I would say, really, I had hired an attorney
Hmm.
and they quit with zero notice.
Mm.
just left their AirPods
Mm-hmm.
on their desk and were gone.
Mm.
And when you have a high enough caseload that you need an attorney,
Mm-hmm.
and then they leave, it's just awful. I mean,
Mm.
anytime staff leaves, it's hard because you kind of, when they have decided that they're going to leave, they stop working. And
Mm-hmm.
then they don't always tell you right away. So sometimes when they leave, you find out that they haven't been working for a couple of months.
Mm.
And so things are a mess and it's just really stressful. It's really hard. And that has happened a few times over the years, but that one, it was 2020, 2021, somewhere around there. And I
Mm-hmm.
just kind of said, you know what? I'm not going to, tie myself as tightly to someone else like that. I have a lawyer friend that has the opposite idea.
Mm-hmm.
He has grown and grown and grown and has a couple of locations and got a bunch of lawyers, and he says it's great. I don't have to practice, and I make money. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, but I care a lot about the quality of a product that's got my name on it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that would never be something that worked for me, to just kind of sit back and let everybody else do it when it's got my name on it. So I said to him, I said, that sounds terrible. All that overhead, that
Mm.
is not something that I want.
I think those are two entirely different animals: the practicing law and running business of law. And it's important to know what's the most suitable for everybody individually, because somebody wants to run a business in law, and they can do that. But if somebody wants to have great clients, be close to cases, then it's just different structure, and you need to build your firm around what you want to do so that you get to enjoy the fruits of your labor.
Yeah, for sure.
You mentioned when we spoke before that to this day, a lot of work that you do is generated by referrals, by word of mouth. As you're going more towards mediation side of things, what are some of the things that you're putting in place to make sure you get more of those cases coming your way?
Just kind of putting it in the universe. No, when I first started doing the mediations, I bought some domains that were mediation focused, and built out those pages. I did some advertising for that. And really, I mean, yeah, putting it in the universe is actually pretty genuine. Just letting people know, you
Mm-hmm.
know, put it on your social media, tell your friends, hey, this is what I'm doing now. Use me, give me a chance.
Mm-hmm.
And then once, if you do a good job, that's how it grows, is you get a couple people to give you a chance, and then it spreads from there.
I'd love to double click on the advertising element that you mentioned. Is it something that you basically decided to teach yourself how to do, or did you find somebody that helped you? And what did that exercise look like for you? And is it still something that you do today?
So I take pride in knowing what I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And so I knew from the beginning, I don't know anything about that stuff. So one of the first hires that I made was for an SEO firm. And I used somebody that had been referred by friends of mine that had used them. I used them for a long time. And then I ended up switching to a girl that had done marketing. And then
Mm-hmm.
she went to law school. And I think she was probably in law school when I started using her.
Mm-hmm.
And then she was a baby lawyer, and now she's got a big firm blowing and going.
Mm-hmm.
But so no, I've never done it myself. I don't. I mean, I get it. They've taught me things,
Mm-hmm.
but no, that's outside of my area of expertise.
You mentioned two things right now that are quite interesting. I love asking my guests what makes for a good marketing partner, whether it's a hire who's part of the team, or whether it's an external agency helping you. And the two things that you mentioned that actually usually come in the top three is, one, they actually understand the law. So they went to law school, or they just really have in-depth knowledge, and they're able to explain when somebody doesn't understand it, but they're able to explain it in plain English. And usually that's quite important for a relationship. What would be your addition to that list? What makes for a good marketing partner for you?
I would say, other than those things, because those apps, yeah, those matter clearly. The responsiveness
Mm-hmm.
and being flexible. One of the things that happened with my girl that is a lawyer now, I had like a bad flu, and I said, hey, we have to turn these ads off because I can't, I'm down. I was out for a week or two. And
Hmm.
unfortunately, that's a really long time. And so I was behind. And I said,
Hmm.
we've got to turn these off because I need to get caught back up. And boom, she turned them off.
Hmm.
So yeah, just being responsive is huge. Being flexible, being willing to make the change and say, hey, look, this isn't working. Let's try this.
What about measuring success? And the reason I ask is many practice owners, they don't set clear goals for their marketing partners, and it makes it very hard to win for them to make sure they're spending resources in the right way, and also for their marketing partners, because if the goals are not set, the idea of what good looks like might be very different. So when you run advertising and for the activities you're doing right now, what are KPIs that you're looking for, and what does the success look like in terms of your marketing?
I'm in the bad category there. I would be a not clear goal kind of person, but you can probably tell from the conversation we've had so far, I go by feel
Hmm.
a lot. And so you know when your phone is ringing and you know when it's not. And you know when quality leads are coming through and when tire kickers are coming through. So, I mean, I've never really had a goal of like, oh, we need this many clicks or this many calls or whatever. It has been, you know it when you see it. So I'm probably
Right.
frustrating.
Well, it is the honest answer, so I appreciate that. What's your settling argument for me? Because as I've seen over the years, law firms that work, again, it could be in-house marketer, it could be external partner, they quite often want to use the metric of cases signed. And from the marketing partner, that could be challenging because marketing partner doesn't control the conversation once the phone has been answered. So from our side, we often see the best metric is cost and volume of qualified inquiries. Because up to that point, the marketing partner can control a lot of variables. We can make recommendations, we can execute on that. But sometimes that is, a subject of conversation. What would be your stance on, judging if the marketing partner being effective? Because based on your answer, I'm guessing that's the quality of the conversations.
Yeah, I mean, it is a combination of both things. Your phone has to ring, but the clients have to sign too.
Hmm.
And so, and some of that for sure is on the lawyer. If you're not a good closer, then you're not going to make it, first of all.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, there are leads that are just clicking around and looking for free information, and there are leads that are ready to move forward. And I don't know how y'all make the difference. You know what I mean? Like I don't
Hmm.
know how you do that. That's your end.
Hmm.
But I just know from my end there's a big difference, and it becomes really obvious when you're the one doing the consults.
Hmm.
So it might be like you need to be talking to the right person in the firm. Not maybe the managing partner, but the person that's doing the consults. They can tell you if the calls are good or not.
I think having that feedback loop is fundamental for the success because that has to be reviewed. That feedback needs to be incorporated in marketing campaigns and also analyzed internally. You've mentioned that you have a very clear goal in terms of mediation cases that you want to take, and this is the direction you want to go in. But so many firms, they don't have that clear agenda, and they might want to take any case that comes their way, and that's the also feedback they're given to their marketing partners, but that there are actually only a certain section of cases that are more profitable, more enjoyable, and builds a better reputation for the firm. And that sales feedback from the conversation, the quality of calls is super important to achieve that long term.
Yeah. Well, I think that's important as a lawyer too. When I first got licensed and went for it, yeah, I took what I could get.
Hmm.
And so yeah, I've always done family law and estate planning and probate. When I very first got licensed, I did some civil litigation, criminal defense, personal injury. I did it all. And as I got in, I narrowed it down to family law, estate planning, and probate. They kind of go together. It's all family stuff,
Hmm.
and they all interconnect with each other. So I think for a lawyer, the idea of like kind of a general practitioner is a little outdated.
Hmm.
I want somebody, the example you give is like you don't go to a cardiologist to get your teeth cleaned. And so I think it's a little bit that way with practice. Certainly for people that live in smaller areas, that would be hard to be a lawyer in a real small town. You would probably have to do more things.
Mm.
But for me, it made the most sense to focus on the things that I like to do that I'm good at,
Hmm.
and that make sense going together.
Absolutely. And sometimes that awareness comes with years of practice, but I 100% agree. The lawyers that trying to be generalists, they try to be all things to all people. They think that they are not missing out cases that could be going their way, but actually they're just not being seen and they're not being recognized. Absolutely. You went through the experience of starting and building your firm, and you mentioned that you are teaching as well. If you are to talk to somebody who's just finished the bar, they're about to start their own practice, what would be your best advice to them to set them on the path of success?
If they've already made that decision, then good for them. Like it would be the hey, do it now.
Hmm.
Because like you said, it's so much easier to struggle when you're fresh out of school and already know how to struggle.
Hmm.
Aside from that, I mean, it's a lot of the things that we've talked about today. Read the rule. If you can get a mentor, get three. Just ask for help.
Hmm.
Be willing to say, hey, I don't know. That's People value that more, the honesty, than bluffing your way through it and screwing it up.
Hmm.
So and good luck.
That's always an element, whether it's with
Yeah.
hiring, with finding good clients. The luck is definitely an element.
Mhm.
I think that's a good recommendation for sure. Rashelle, where can our listeners learn more about your practice online?
My website is www.thefettyfirm.com. Nice and simple. We've got a Facebook, and that's probably it for social media.
Perfect. We'll be sure to link it. Rashelle, thank you so much for coming on today.
And thanks for having me.
Thank you.